funny because I remember 17, 18-year-old James being at Texas Rangers Fan Fest and asking questions to Derek Nadell or John Radigan and just saying like, well, what advice do you have for guys who are coming up? And the same question you just asked, I asked 11 years ago. So this is kind of a full circle weird moment for me. All right, welcome to another edition of the Bison Bulletin. And I'll tell you what, this is going to be a bit different this time because for the first time in I don't know how long, I am on the other side of this Bison Bulletin. And we talk with Bison players, Bison coaches. Now we have our very own Kat Duguay interviewing me, which is very weird. I don't know what to make of it, but Kat, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again. I know you're here because you've been watching James' interviews and he has been crushing it. So I figured I would shake it up a little bit with a fun interview where we talk to James and learn a little bit more about him. I will say I've been wanting to do this since I think the first day we met when I realized I had a million broadcast questions for you. So this is definitely a little bit selfish that I'm doing this because I just have answers that I want for myself. But I think people will find them interesting too. So I'm ready to kind of switch up the roles and have you be the one answering the questions if you're ready to.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is something I'm not used to doing, answering questions. I'm used to asking them. So, yeah, people that don't know me, especially with the Bison only being here the 1 year, this is kind of I don't know about tell all, but a little bit more informative for the people who don't know.
Yes, absolutely. And so, I mean, I have my impression of your background from when I first got to know you, but if you could give kind of a little James Trietley elevator pitch, how would you, explain to people a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so, man, it's such a broad question, but yeah, I guess just the basis is I grew up in Arlington, Texas, born and raised, moved to Abilene. I mean, I was there for the summer partially, and then I've moved here to Abilene full-time. To take on the director of broadcasting and media sales job. Couldn't be happier. I started out doing broadcasting when I was 18. I played baseball all throughout my younger years, and then I figured out, hey, I'm not that great of an athlete. So let's just focus towards getting into the booth and try and broadcast this stuff. So I started at 18 years old. I tried my best to find a way into the booth while I was still on the high school baseball team for Mansfield Summit. I was like, Coach, I'm not playing. I don't need to be here in the dugout. Just put me up in the PA booth or do something. But I ended up doing, I think the first call I had was I did rec league slow pitch softball for my neighbor, the Regal Eagles. And there's audio recording somewhere in the interwebs of, me doing that. So that was my first real transition into broadcast, and I know I've loved it ever since. I did high school radio for Mansfield Summit and Ben Barber, and I just kind of had a passion and a love for it.
Yeah, I consider myself a bit of an internet sleuth, and I'm going to try and find that original audio if it exists on the internet. I'm going to put it in here. So let's see, but. So that kind of answers my first question, which is, what made you choose broadcasting? I know that you said that you were already a player and you kind of wanted to get some more playtime, if you will, in a different way. But, obviously there's other things you could have been doing with sports. So was there something that kind of clicked with you where you're like, oh, I like to talk to the people, I like stats, etc. What kind of led you in that direction?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was, kind of thinking about it, and it was the fact that I had such a passion for playing the game of baseball. And there was a point where I think that passion it didn't die. It just went away, and I found a passion elsewhere. So like I said, I was doing high school radio. I was on 2 times a week, and I played high school baseball up until my senior year. Then I was like, you know what? I want to go towards this passion. So there wasn't one thing that really drove me towards it. It was really just one thing fell off, jumped into another spectrum of staying in sports in some way. And the funny thing is that's sometimes life. Sometimes life, everything happens for a reason. So I wasn't destined to be an athlete, but in some way, I'm still able to work with athletes and some really great individuals. So, getting into that broadcast space, it was either whether I was on air doing radio, which I've done a couple times, PA announcing, or what I'm doing now is the play-by-play side and being a broadcaster. And you hear it all the time, and I'm very humble in what I do, and that's one thing people will know about me. I'll never boast on all these things that people are like, oh, yeah, I hear it a lot. You have the voice for radio,
Mhm.
and the age-old joke is, oh, you got the face for radio too, and like, aha, I hear that all the time. It's great.
Foul.
Right. But you hear it so often, and you start to believe it. I did not believe it when I first started. I hated listening to my own voice. And a lot of people still share that sentiment of they hate hearing their own voice. But I figured, I took a bunch of speech classes in colleges. I'm like, if I'm going to talk in front of a bunch of people at one point, it may not be in front of, but to a bunch of people on radio or TV or whatever, I got to get over the fear of doing that. And I have to enjoy what my voice sounds like. So if I like it, if people like it, then I feel like I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think, it's one of those like fake it till you make it kind of, where you're like, other people say it, so eventually I will believe it.
Right.
That's cool about the taking speech classes in college. I didn't really consider how helpful that would be. And, I do find you to be a very, like I'd been saying to you before, like you speak with a really strong cadence that like doesn't really waver, and you sound very sure of everything you're going to say. And, I always tell you this, but the first time I heard you doing our broadcast, I released an expletive. And was like, holy moly, that guy he's really talented. So I get the first time people hear you, it's like, this guy really does have a voice that should be doing this. If it's not this, it's some type of, like audiobook reading or something. But one thing that kind of, led me to want to know, are there some other things that you've done or that you do, you think, to prepare you for this job, even down to the way you go about preparing yourself for a game? I've seen some of the notes you do and some of the things that you write down heading into a game. Are there other things you do that you think prepare you for this type of job, just to be on the radio in general, even if it's like resting your voice? You have a little honey lozenge, so what kind of stuff goes into preparing to be on the radio?
Yeah, the prep work's kind of interesting. And I'll talk about the health side first because that's a little bit shorter. There's times definitely during the colder seasons, being in Texas, allergies get everybody, especially being out here in big country in Abilene. The wind's blowing. You're always dealing with some sort of allergies hitting you. So I'm on an allergy pill a day at this point, just to make sure I stay somewhat healthy. The voice sounds a little bit good. It's been a little bit hoarse when I wake up in the morning still, but and I see right there, I had a little bit of cough. But if I ever get to a point during season where I need to, I don't know, not rest the voice, but take care of it a little bit more, I've always heard the age-old trick is the Earl Grey tea, a little bit of honey in there, the throat lozenges. I'm not going to pick a brand. You choose whatever you like.
Or sponsor us, lozenge.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, heck, I'll say mine. Mine's the Halls Soothers, the cough drops.
Halls. I know you're watching right now.
See? Yeah. No, so that's the health side of it. But as far as the prep work goes, it depends on what we're doing, because I've done a variety of sports, but just sticking to baseball side, let's say, we're going to the start of the season. I've got a little bit more time. And obviously with our team, I'm a homer. I'm a Flying Bison, bleed our colors. So I will research our team a lot deeper than I will research, say we go up and play, Lake Charles, or we play Sherman. Especially if we have the start of the season coming up, like we have that first series coming. I have time now to start researching if there's players announced or if there's things to know about the teams. So I can do a deeper dive on that. But then say, okay, now we're playing. I have to go from a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, technically, into a Friday, Saturday, Sunday series. My window it's gone from here to here. It's limited to what I can do. So I still have to know about the team that's coming up, but I have that limited time to shrink down to what I can go after. So I just try to get as much information as possible whatever's out there, and just some fun stuff too.
Yeah.
Like I found some really weird anecdotes about players and teams and whatever, or cities or towns we're in. I think the fun thing is, I don't know if you're familiar with Nardwar, and he does interviews with like the artists and rappers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He finds like the most niche type of information that only like a family member knows.
Yes. Yeah.
I would, like I want to find that for like a player. So like if I have time to do that, that's what I try to search for, is the fun stuff. And they're like, how in the world, like a family member's listening about their son playing. Like, how in the world does he know that? So that kind of goes into the prep work of just finding the really fun stuff, but also giving the fans the facts and giving them everything they need to know about the player and the teams that are being talked about.
Yeah. And I, from my end, because I do listen, to all the road broadcasts, someone who is still, learning more about baseball for myself, I think you give a really good mix of intricate, details and stats and facts, while also giving stuff that's a bit more, general umbrella facts. That way people who are, regardless of what level of fandom you're in, you can, tune in and understand and appreciate what you're saying. And I remember when you talked about how Wyatt Fielding was he like crowned as a joke or something, the most attractive kid in his high school or something with his friends. There's some weird like story about that. That you talked about, and he was like, how'd you know that? So that type of stuff where, you can kind of surprise people with the stuff you've learned about them, and, make them wonder if they need to button up their, friends or internet history or what.
Yeah, that part's always interesting, is getting to see like the small little anecdotes of information that they're like, how in the world did you find that?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, knowing all this stuff and preparing this way, it sounds like a ton of work, and it is. But what are some of the things that you find to be more challenging, or things that you struggle a little bit with that you have to work through with this type of job?
It's a good question. Trying to find, again, you want to find as much information as possible, right? Whether you're doing baseball, whether you're doing any other sport that you're play-by-play for, or even color. Like that's the thing that people can sometimes get mixed up, is like the difference between play-by-play and color. And obviously I do both. I was really honored and grateful to work with Caleb Galvan, who was the voice for 2024 and partially with me in 2025, getting to work off each other, getting to figure out all the information that is out there. And there's so much that we can find now, especially online, about each player and each town and each team. And I guess, I don't know if it's a challenge. I try to over prepare as much as possible, because if I do that, then when we get down to, I don't know, I'm just going to throw this out there, say the 7th inning, it's like the Bison are up 20-1, and the other team is on their, 8th pitcher, and we've taken our breaks and we're trying to go through this whole deal. But at the same time, like I have to fill time, in between that. I have to find stuff to talk about. And that all stems into me, the job title of being a play-by-play guy. You're a storyteller. And that's not how I always describe it to fans. But people who know that this is a storytelling job. I'm painting the picture, especially on radio. TV is a little bit different, but I get to paint the picture for whoever's listening, trying to picture everything that's happening in the game. 2 teams, all these players, the ballpark, the smell of the ballpark, the feel, the look, everything it is. And that's all attributed to like Eric Nadel, Hall of Fame radio voice for the Rangers. And I've listened to him over the years. He's a big role model of mine. Take after his game and the way that he has operated over the years. And that's how you want to do this job. You want to paint the picture for the fans. And I think, from what I've heard, the fans have reciprocated their appreciation for how I've been able to do it here.
Yes, and that's a good segue. I do have more questions that I'm going to circle back to about some more general broadcasting stuff, but that is the perfect segue for 2 questions I have, which is one, you're talking about describing the different environments, which I remember the first time, it's probably our first game, you described what our players were wearing in great detail. And that was even something where I was like, holy cow, I would have never thought to describe to the people who are only listening, what we're wearing. And it was just such a tiny little element that, not only does it help the listener, but it really just reinforces the brand, right? And it talks about, hey, here's what we're wearing and here's what you can expect from us. And as someone, who does a lot of the branding, this is so silly. I have chills right now thinking about just the connections of everything. I got to move on. So when you're talking about describing the environment of being on the road versus being at home, what's the difference there? And again, this is, when we were in our prior league. So obviously it'll change, coming into 2026. But how was it, calling those games at home versus on the road? And then second question, additional to that, the response from the Flying Faithful with you has been incredible, rightfully so. You do a great job. You're so kind. You're so fun. So what has it been like to become basically a local celebrity? So go.
So there's a lot to take in there, but we'll start off with question one. Talk about the home versus road split. Obviously, we started off on the road last year. We're in Texarkana, and not knowing anybody really on that bus. From Sean, our bus driver, who I got to know really well, to our coaching staff with Dyson and everybody else, to all of our players. I didn't know a soul on that bus really. And going in, there's nerves, you're right now, you're the road voice. You're the only one that can paint the picture for them. So it was weird. And I went in on the road, and my first interview was with Kyle Dyson, our manager. And I'll tell you what, we went up in the stand because we were in the bleacher stands doing that broadcast, with the sun baking on us. I think it was like a 94-degree first pitch, which was kind of mild for late May in Texas. But I brought him up there, and Kyle is very low key in the way that he delivers, and I don't know him, and it could be a bit intimidating for me, and it was. And he'll laugh about it now when I talk to him, and how intimidating it was to do that interview, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen here. I don't know if I'm going to mess this up. I've heard great things like background, and we hit it off. We did a really good interview. And then, a little bit of pressure taken off. Now I go to other coaches. Now I go to players, and the season continues with that. So that was really interesting to get to do the road broadcast. And obviously coming home, that's just a really, really big thing. Home is such a big word to encapsulate how these broadcasts go. I want to have that home field advantage when you listen to me on a broadcast. So in saying that, I'm going to be a little bit more partial to us because, if you're going to use the label voice the Flying Bison, I am. I'm going to use that to the best of my advantage, and there's going to be a little bit more enthusiasm with certain things, and that's just kind of how it went out. It was a tremendous way to start the year or start the career with Abilene, with the Flying Bison. And to your second question, when you go off of the home crowd, I mean, listen, this is my second summer collegiate team I've gotten to work with. I work with the Chillicothe Mudcats in Chillicothe, Missouri, a town of 10,000 people. Couldn't be happier to have experienced that 2 years ago. Fast forward to, Abilene and working here and getting to meet these fans. It was surreal. I mean, you can't say enough about the Flying Faithful and how dedicated and loyal they are, and getting to interact with them. And it didn't take long for me to really interact with a lot of these fans just coming into the gate and going to work. They would be waiting out for a promotional night and just ready to get in. They would see me and notice, who I am. And for me, very surreal at still a young age at 28 and still trying to build my career. And these fans are just like, hey, we love hearing you. And it's such a great thing to hear from somebody you don't know on a personal level, because, you hear it from family and friends all the time, but then people that you haven't quite met yet, getting to hear that praise is truly meaningful. And throughout the entire season, calling games at home, listening to the home crowd, the setup that we have there, they love it. They make the broadcasts because you can hear the crowd roar. When Landon Williams hit that walk-off for us, that was, and you talk about chills,
literally,
we're feeling them right now. A lot of moments, and you can't. The players have talked about it in past interviews. They make this team what it is, and we couldn't do it without them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, especially from an out of towner. And, you're not from Abilene, you're from not too far, but, neither of us are from Abilene. And I feel like the way Abilene just accepts people into the community is magical. I mean, for me, it's like that real Southern hospitality, but I've never felt like I was looked at as an outsider.
Yeah. I
And,
think that's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to add on to that. That's the funny part is that, you come from somewhere, a big city. I come from an area where there's a big city. Arlington's getting bigger, obviously. But at the same time, a lot of people were like, why move to Abilene? And it was jokingly, I was like, I don't mind it. I enjoyed 2 months out of the year being there, and the people were great. I made a lot of good friendships here in a 2 month span that have carried over into now being here full time. There's something really special going on in Abilene, and whether people outside this town want to believe it, it's something I really enjoy being a part of, and I felt really welcomed coming in here, and that's something you really can't replicate anywhere else.
Yeah, no, and I get similar questions of like, what are you doing in West Texas, especially being, living in Chicago, so it's obviously very far away. And it is hard to describe because and this is going to sound so cheesy, but it's true, but it's like a feeling, it's the feeling of like there's comfort and like the welcoming, the warmth, literally the warmth, but also figuratively. I mean, we can't even go too far on the food because we'll go crazy. But obviously, I mean, Jay's, Bell's Chicken Shack, even this is so silly for me, but Whataburger. I know it's not Abilene specific, but like there's a Whataburger here. Love Whataburger.
That's a thing for you that you don't get to experience as often as us Texans do.
Yes. And even just the amazing barbecue and again, I'll go off on a tangent, but when I will always say that this wouldn't work as well if it wasn't in Abilene because of the fans we have. And we all work very hard. So I know that this group, in the front office, and our game day staff could, do this somewhere else, but it just wouldn't have the same connection to the community and the same feel it has because the way Abilene has, opened their arms up to us, accepted us in their homes. And, we always say Abilene is a baseball town. Baseball belongs here. And I think the Flying Faithful just exemplify that every day, even in the off season. And I think that's something too, I really take note of is, people say to me, like, what do you do when the season ends? And it's like, we stay in contact with the fans in the whole off season because they stay in contact with us, so it's the way that people, tell us they miss us the second the season ends, stuff like that, that really makes us feel even more connected to the community, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, Abilene and baseball go hand in hand. There's no question about it. There's a reason these fans wanted baseball back in Abilene, and they definitely appreciate everything that the team does. We do in the front office, and yeah, it's just a special time out here.
Yeah, it is. So you touched on this a little bit before about being on the bus with the players and going on the road with them. You're in a very unique position where I feel like you are, you've obviously joined us in the front office and you are game day staff over the summer, but you're the only person that goes on the road with the team besides the coaches, of course. So just talk a little bit, what is that like for you, even on a personal level? And also, in terms of your play-by-play broadcast, do you think that adds more by you being able to spend so much time with the players?
Yeah. This is we could pull the curtain back a little on this because not a lot of people get to hear about this stuff. But I've done, like I said, I've done this before, getting to travel with the players, busing, 4 to 9 hour bus rides, however far we have to go. But it does add a personal touch to this. And again, me being the home broadcaster, I have to get to know the players. I have to get to know the coaches. And you know what? I give a lot of credit to our players and coaching staff last year. They were really receptive in a positive light in me being there because they didn't have that in 24. And obviously not everybody was there 24, 25, but there were some, and they responded well. And I feel like we bonded. We developed a player broadcaster, personal friendship there. And the thing is, I have a lot of respect for the game, and I think a lot of people in our organization do. There's a certain word we throw around a lot. It's feel, right? And having baseball feel, I think, is one of the most important unwritten rules to have. And as a broadcaster, you got to know when to not insert yourself into a certain situation, but just be there for it, right? Again, I've developed a good friendship with a lot of these guys that, are off doing stuff in, 26, and they responded well in the way that they were able to just kind of have me out there and in certain situations and get to know them on that personal level. So like, heck, like you talked about Wyatt Fielding, we're talking about stuff that he posted on his Instagram or something, like just random notes that we have. But at the same time, having that feel, I'm not going to cross a certain line of like, when there's a loss, I think we know we're not doing like a ho hum. Oh, hey, you just lost 6-4. Tell us about that. We're not doing a press conference. When we do these, we want to have a certain feel like we have to get back on a bus, right? We all have to travel back on that bus. If it's the final day of the series, we don't have to. We're driving back, and if we just lost, we don't want to deal with that. We just have to. 4 hours. We're getting back at like 4 a.m. There's certain levels to it, but at the same time, getting to see these guys in their own element, not just on the baseball field, it's something that, if you ever get the chance to do it, do it. That's the basis of this. I had it in 23 when I was in Missouri. I bonded really well with those guys. I feel like I've bonded very well in 25. I'm not going to speak for those guys, but
of course,
it felt like it was reciprocated well in what I was doing, and they understood it. And there was a good level of respect and a good level of friendship that I got to make with a bunch of our players and staff this year.
Yeah, which is amazing too, because there's such a range of ages in this organization, from players all the way up to ownership. And so I think them having someone who's pretty close to them in age, that they can feel like, that they can also have that connection to the front office. I don't know if that's an element of it at all, but, even last season, it's like you talked with us closely. And so, I think it's someone like you, I feel like represent the front office well, even though there isn't that mixing of your relationship with the players versus your relationship with the front office. I still feel like you're someone that could, if they had a concern or something like that, or wanted something, you're another extension that they could go to. Because you had that good relationship with them. And then from the aspect of just personally, I mean, it's fun to, like interact with them. And even from my perspective, where, I'm much older and I'm also in much different, position. They have such fun personalities and they seem like they have such a good time together. And, them being able to have fun with members of the team, whether it's you or Kyle or, anyone, I think is just a nice added, part of being in summer ball, because it should also be fun. And it shouldn't just be, like you said, we shouldn't be dragging them after a loss to be like, tell me how that loss feels. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
And I find the feel comment to be really interesting. It put a name to how I try to go about, my content creation as well with the players, which isn't always perfect, of course. But, trying to have that feel of like, hey, they're right in the middle of like a workout. Don't stop them to be like, can you come help me with this? But that said, is there a tip you would have for someone who's coming up in your industry, or, some advice you might have for them? Because for me, hearing that, I feel like telling someone have good baseball feel or good sport feel, which sounds strange, but, I feel like that's a great tip. But do you have advice for people who are coming up, and want to do something similar to you? Is it, hey, go on the road, make sure you're picking up on the vibes right? So, what would you give someone who's like 18-year-old James, watching this?
This is funny because I remember 17, 18-year-old James being at Texas Rangers Fan Fest and asking questions to Derek Nadell or John Radigan, and just saying like, well, what advice do you have for guys who are coming up? And the same question you just asked, I asked 10, 11 years ago. So this is kind of a full circle weird moment for me. But I would have to say, just advice wise, be patient with this job, with this career. It's not always going to be pretty. I'll say that. when people say, oh yeah, just grind it out, man, this is a grind. This is a grind of a career to do. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, maybe you get a call the next day. You're one of the lucky one in a million to do that. But you have to find a way to build your brand as a broadcaster. You have to create exposure. And the one I've heard so much is the ability to just say yes to certain things and to most things, to most opportunities that are out there. Mm-hmm. Again, pulling the curtain back a little bit. Again, I do other sports. I've done them for other organizations, and I'll mention this story: Dave Campbell's Texas football and the high school football and sports realm that they've created over the years. They've created the broadcast side, and in 2022, I was working for a TV production company, and they basically they had someone on there, Ashley Pickle. She was their she basically did some of the not really hosting. She was analyzing and hosting and sideline reporting for the one station I was on. Well, she worked for Dave Campbell's as well. She was an executive producer, and she overheard me one night, and she was like, oh, you do broadcasting? Well, we need broadcasters. So I tried to get in the high school football field. She was busy with getting ready for playoffs. She ended up getting back to me and saying, hey, I don't have any high school football for you yet. I have water polo. Can you do that? Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah. I said, I got it. I was like, I know water polo like the back of my hand. So I went ahead and did 4 matches of water polo, and she like messaged me back. She said, you want to call a high school football playoff game next week? Like, you just said yes to water polo and you killed it. I was like, I told you, I know what I'm doing. I'll be honest here, and I think I've told her, I had no idea what I was doing. I looked up a video like that night, and I was like, what do I need to say for water polo? Because it is an intense sport. If you've never watched water polo, folks, please give it a look. It is intense stuff, especially at the high school level. That's wild. But yes, the ability to just say yes to opportunities, because you never know what that's going to lead to. Take things as a stepping stone. Not everything's going to be the last place you'll ever be. Obviously, people have dreams of being at the professional level. Take what you can from every experience you get, and just be ready. Just be ready for what it is. Smile through all the glory that it is. Sometimes smile through the pain. Yes. And, that's just how it is, unfortunately. But you got to have fun with it. You got to have a passion, and I've been happy enough to say that I get to talk about sports for a living and create a passion with it.
I think that is amazing advice. I know that I've taken so much of your time, but I'm just going to take a tiny little bit more to ask one more question.
Absolutely. Which
is, without giving anything super secret and exciting away, what's something you're really excited for in this upcoming season? 2026, 3rd season for the Flying Bison.
Yeah, this is fun. This is my first time getting to go really back-to-back years with the team, place I can call home and be the home broadcaster for somewhere. So that's really special for me. This is year 3. Year 1 was again, it was the inaugural season. You guys did a phenomenal job. Trust me, I wasn't here, but I was following. I'll tell you that. But this year's going to be really cool. A new league. We always have some new players coming in, trying to get to that next level. We've got a good coaching staff on hand. A lot of cool promotions. But from a broadcast side, I want to hear from fans. I want to hear from you guys, and you tell me, what you like, what you don't like. And always, if you see me and I'm not like working, if I'm working, just come tap me on the shoulder. See if we want to talk for a little bit. Just talk baseball or do something. Yeah. Whatever. I'm more than happy to talk to the Flying Faithful and to you guys that just, you guys come out, pay money to watch the game. I'd be more than happy to talk with y'all and just see what you guys want to hear. But I think just trying to continue delivering the story of the Flying Bison game in and game out, just continue doing that at the level that we've set last year, trying to always exceed expectations and just go out there and see the team win.
That's right. Absolutely. And we're so excited to have you back for another season. It's been amazing having you in the front office with me. And I just want to thank you on behalf of John and George, who aren't here to say that, but I know they'd agree. Thank you so much for all the work you put in for us. It is not an easy job. I know the hours are long and can be very grueling. So thank you so much. And thank you for letting me flip the script on you today and ask you some questions. I could ask you a billion more, but then it'll be a movie, you know, so I guess it's a good time to stop. But thank you, James Trietley, the voice of your Abilene Flying Bison.
Thank you, Kat. I appreciate it. And again, thankful for this organization that gave me a chance last year, and continuing to grow with y'all into another season. And as John would say, if he were sitting right next to me or right next to you, fly, Bison, fly.
Fly, Bison, fly.